I was listening to NPR a week or so ago. They were talking about conspiracy theories and how they're so against conspiracy theories and how to spot a conspiracy theory, this, that, and the third.
Conspiracy entrepreneurs are people who gain money and influence by spreading conspiracist beliefs. And there are entire networks of influencers and media outlets devoted to posing as sources of this, supposedly hidden knowledge. For example, debunked claims that vaccines cause more harms than good, or the big lie that the presidential election was rigged against Trump. Conspiracy thinking detracts from real political engagement.
I thought it was actually quite funny and ironic because this is the same program who just earlier was talking about the Willie Lynch letter as though it was fact. And
NPR was?
NPR.
The clip that you began this piece with is so indicative of the Willie Lynch syndrome that is perpetuated hundreds of years after 1712 when he consulted with slave owners on how to divide and conquer Black people. And we're still brainwashed and that we're still buying into the Willie Lynch syndrome.
And so it's interesting to me how, when it comes to Black culture in particular, and of course, black folks aren't consumers of NPR. Their audience is predominantly white, educated folks. But, when it comes to Black culture in particular, they believe conspiracies, but they believe the wrong conspiracies. They believe false conspiracies. Because conspiracies are out there. There's no doubt about that, but they believe the wrong things. And I noticed that the conspiracies that they believe are particularly the ones, to Blanche's point, that validate their oppressive state. If this conspiracy sums up this narrative that white supremacy is real and there's a elaborate agenda to keep Negroes in their place, then that's a conspiracy I will get behind. And not only that, you see it validated and backed. I mean, look at, for example, Dave Chappelle. He did his comedy special, which it wasn't really comedy, it was a lecture of sorts.
They killed him. What are you signifying? That you can kneel on a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
That was paid for by Netflix. Netflix, for all intents and purposes, is considered a mainstream platform. And he's sitting here lying. Of course, he didn't think he was lying, but lying about what caused George Floyd's death.
The problem is he did not murder George Floyd. And we know that conclusively because the medical examiner who performed the autopsy on George Floyd confirmed he was not asphyxiated. He was not choked to death. He most likely died of a drug OD. He had fatal levels of fentanyl in his system. And that's been known for some time, though, again, ignored.
And then you have this clip. This is from a film called The Great Debaters, starring Denzel Washington. Again, this film was backed by a large Hollywood studio, a mainstream film for all intents and purposes. And they are pretending that it's a fact that this Willie Lynch letter is real.
Anybody know who Willie Lynch was? Anybody? Raise your hand.
But the whole Willie Lynch thing, I did want to talk about that with you all. It's very obviously fake. Very obviously fake. I was just reading it earlier while you guys were talking. And I noticed off the bat, at least 3 anachronisms. One, it continuously uses the word nigger. Now, why is that important? It's important because this letter allegedly was written in 1712. The letter opens up with this Willie Lynch character saying, I come to you today in the year of our Lord, 1712, to tell you how to control your slaves, that and the third. And he continues to use the word nigger. Well, again, 1712 is important because the word nigger, its earliest use was 1755. 1755. Another word that it uses, I have here, is it uses the word refuel. That word's earliest known use is 1811, almost 100 years after this letter was supposed to be written.
Before this
another one that it another one that it uses is the word foolproof. That word didn't come into circulation until 1874. And so I just basically completely deconstructed the entire Willie Lynch letter in just that short amount of time. However, I saw this clip going around and I commented on it. What was interesting was some of the comments that I received from folks. I say here, the Willie Lynch letter or story is actually a myth. This Rockamore and they have more in their name, so you know what that's all about.
No,
They say
you a blackamoor. That's what they. That's what you.
They said somehow it appears to be a living truth in the minds, circumstances, and behaviors of our so-called Black people today. So even if the letter was a fake, the ideology was and is alive and well, unfortunately. Another person says, I guess the Rockamore guy again says, I read the Willie Lynch letter time and again, long before many were even aware of it. I use it as a reference point very often. I'm not sure what it is you're trying to say.
Of course you're not.
And then this guy, Knowledge 45, he says, Chado Jackson, well, explain the behavior of Black people today that's described in this letter. We want some things to be fake. I don't know what WJOL means. But I guess he's telling me that, you just want the letter to be
white Jesus
Sorry?
only loves. Is that what WJOL?
Are you serious, Blanche? Or you just trying to?
But he says that he's insinuating that I just want the letter to be fake. But how else do you explain the condition of Black folks today if the letter isn't real?
Really?
And this guy again calls himself Knowledge 45. So again, to me, these 3 comments alone are the summation of how many Black people deal with these kind of hoaxes and these kind of fraudulent materials.
I don't get caught up into the truthfulness of Willie Lynch. I don't even care. The science of the Willie Lynch letter is 100% right and exact.
And it's ironic because he's saying that I want the letter to be fake because that somehow goes into my narrative, when in reality, this is just a projection. He wants the letter to be real because it validates his oppressive status. So anyway.
Yeah. And they said, how else can you explain the condition of Black folks? I mean, give me a break. That's the only rationale, because like Blanche pointed out earlier, Black folks directly out of slavery, just a generation or two, did not act like the Blacks of today. And so something is certainly amiss there. So we know this is all, a bunch of nonsense. We can blame a multitude of things for the current condition of Black folks, the assault, the assault of the progressive ideology and all of its proponents in many different spheres of social life and influence from the early 20th century on down to 2024 is the reason why Black folks are in the position that they are in. But let me just add this other layer. When it comes to this whole notion of slavery and wanting to make everything bad about slavery, and it, again, this is the slavery or the birth in the late 15th century of European expansion is their creation myth, like I've said in the past. And so this is why this whole thing is one big Marxist trick. It is probably the most effective tool if you don't know how to spot it in their toolkit as far as their propaganda is concerned, because everything that sort of undergirds our modern system, they link to the whole legacy of slavery, which again, relates to imperialism and colonialism and all of those things. And so if you can sort of trace or pinpoint and say, well, that is, our modern day creation myth, or that is, man's original sin, so to speak, it invalidates the societal framework on which we stand, so as to pave the way for a new kind of society. And so again, this is why they lean and they exploit Blacks and our history of being slaves, parenthetically speaking, even though we are all individual people with our own individual genealogy and heritage. We all have our own individual heritage and so on and so forth. And so who knows exactly if my ancestors were slaves or not. But the reality is that they lean heavily on that so as to use Blacks as another front, a separate front in this multifaceted attack against modern day civilization so as to pave way for the this sort of Marxian style utopia, regardless of what you want to call it, this statist ideology that they want to see come about in the near future. And so the point of it all is to just ceaselessly assault the credibility of our current system, and hearkening on slavery constantly is just, a part of that process.
I think it's like the easiest way. It's the easiest thing to use to tear it down. You know what I mean? So because I mean, we have this oppressive people. We certainly can't have these poor, oppressive, or oppressed group of people that can't find their own way. They can't, make it here in this country. So we got to tear the whole thing down and just scrap it and start all over again. It's crazy how you hear a lot of Black people saying these things just regularly on, like, I've seen just different shows and stuff, and Black people just saying it like it's nothing. We just got to tear it all down. And it's like, you do of course they don't understand what they're saying, but you just hear it. It is so common to hear. What the guy said in under your post, Chad, I have heard other people say this too. Oh, I know it's not real, but I think it's a great way to sort of analyze what is happening to the Black man. See, like it's not real. I know it's not real, but this is something we can use to show what's happening.
The only thing left for Black people to do is to burn it down. We've been lynched, we've been murdered, and if you look around, never before in my 91 years of history as an American have I ever seen the nation more racially divisive than it is at this very moment, including the days of the Ku Klux Klan and the segregation laws of the South.
Why did he morph into Gollum? He looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Like, Gary Belafonte was the most handsome man in the world. He turned into Gollum. You see that? That's crazy.
Because that evil, it be getting in your nose.
Goodness. What happened to the wavy hair? The wavy hair, he had all. What happened?
I guess age has a way of creeping up on you like that.
Goodness, creeping. That goodness.
But what do you think about what he said, Blanche?
Well, it's an indictment on how bad they say it was. If he's saying that it's worse now, then it couldn't have been that bad back then because it ain't bad now. Like, he just told on himself. And so I don't understand how Black folks hear this man say this. He said it's worse today than it was when they showing you all the footage of the dogs and the sticks and the bricks and the water hose. He's saying it's worse then than the lynchings and the hangings it's worse now. And that stuff isn't even happening. So to me, that's an indictment on the whole narrative of how bad it really was back during that time period.